At this very moment, a blow to Putin's face. Ukraine has struck at the Kremlin's security forces, the next dictator. Now, without warning, top Russian ports are burning with the flames of our revenge. You have to see this. Ships are sinking live on air. In Moscow, they regretted what they had done. A technological shock for the Kremlin. Terrorizing Ukrainians with drones and missiles no longer works. Fedorov has done the incredible. The Iron Dome is already operational. The fierce Shahid cutter has passed its trial by fire. An unexpected turning point. What Putin feared so much has finally happened. Israel has cut the defensive alliance between Iran and Russia. The Caspian is on fire. The arms exchange between the dictators ended in catastrophe before everyone's eyes. A bold full stop has finally been put. And all of this happened just now. Hello, I'm Darina Hutsakalo and we're getting started. Our forces struck back hard for the longest attack on Ukraine and made the Russians count the minutes until the air raid alert was over. Massive drone strikes near the FSB building in Russia's Leningrad region. The strike landed almost right at the doorstep of the security services. Could this be a warning to Putin? And on top of that, 2 Russian ports immediately found themselves at the center of the action. Clearly, they were not prepared for such a devastating greeting from the defense forces. Our drones flew over 850 kilometers and landed in a flash after their long journey.
So I came home, basically. And I see this scene. You can see the fire from right here. When I was coming here, everything was burning at the oil facility, the port, everything was on fire. There's military equipment stationed on the bridge in Kostkovo.
Even the Novatek plant couldn't withstand the pressure. Ust-Luga is located right on the coast of the Baltic Sea. The enterprise processed stable gas condensate and shipped petroleum products to foreign markets. Meanwhile, the Russians are lamenting yet another major loss. Drones attacked the Vyborg shipyard, an Arctic patrol ship which is being built for the FSB Coast Guard, listed and collided with another vessel. It was engulfed in flames. It seems there are no safe zones left in Russia anymore. The Moscow region was also shaken all night long. Dintsovo barely made it to the morning. All night, Russian air defense pretended to be working. Things were tense in the Tver region as well. Explosions echoed at full volume. The trio of losers is rounded out by the Belgorod region.
After the attack, there were disruptions to electricity, water, and heating. The governor of Belgorod region, Vyacheslav Gladkov, stated that serious damage was inflicted on energy infrastructure facilities.
Mikhailo Fedorov actually did it. An Iron Dome is gradually being erected over Ukraine. The results of the air defense reform are already visible to the naked eye. Our technologies put up a worthy fight during one of the most massive attacks since the beginning of the war. In just 3 hours, a single Mi-8 helicopter crew from the naval forces destroyed 12 Shaheds. Precisely, quickly, professionally. We are proud of our naval aviators. And in addition, operators of Ukrainian interceptor drones have started engaging enemy targets remotely using new remote control technologies.
This changes the approach to building air defense.
At the same time, the company Wild Hornets, known for its Sting interceptor drones, also announced the combat use of remote Shahed hunting technology. We have already begun serial deployment of the Hornet vision control technology, and very soon a large number of systems will be sent to the front. This will allow efficient crews to control much larger sections of the front, from 20 kilometers up to 100 kilometers. As we can see, the defense system is not just withstanding the pressure, it is evolving in real time. Ukrainian air defense is reaching a level that until recently seemed unattainable. A clear signal to Russia, it's time to write off drones and missiles and send them for scrap. This already looks like a turning point. Israel is striking targets in the Caspian Sea for the first time. The Iranian port of Bandar Yanzali and a hub through which Iran and Russia were transferring weapons and drones have come under attack. This has been reported by several media outlets citing information from the Wall Street Journal. The goal of the operation was to disrupt the Russian-Iranian supply line and to demonstrate the vulnerability of Iranian defenses on the Caspian, writes the Wall Street Journal. It is known that the effects of the attack are already being felt. The headquarters of the Navy and several ships sustained damage. Moscow has condemned the attack. However, that's hardly surprising. The strike hits directly at their joint logistics with Iran. What just yesterday functioned as the Moscow-Tehran connection is now starting to crack. The alliance is beginning to waver. The disruption in the dictator's game deepens with each passing day. The route is especially important for supplying Shahed drones. Russia uses them against targets in Ukraine, Iran, and the Persian Gulf. At this very moment, our forces have trapped the Russian army in a cage. An epic moment. The lock is closed. Putin is desperately trying to break free. Crimean units are put on combat alert, but it's all in vain. The final clearing of Donbass. Near Lyman, Gerasimov mourns the losses of his army, and on top of that, our forces have completed a special operation in Kupiansk. Now there isn't a trace of Russians left there. The enemy's spring-summer offensive has stalled. Syrskyi keeps the occupiers in a tight grip. Could the final liberation of Ukrainian lands be next? Let's watch.
There are no more reserves, so Russia is planning to send all mobilized personnel from Crimea to the front. This was reported by analysts from the Institute for the Study of War. The date for the mass deployment seems to have been deliberately chosen for April Fool's Day, the 1st of April. At the same time, some units from the peninsula have already been sent to the mainland, according to the Ukrainian command. First and foremost, this is to fill the gaps caused by Russia's record losses last week.
They really have brought in reserves, including from temporarily occupied Crimea and from other directions, to the Zaporizhzhia and Pokrovsk sectors. These include naval infantry and airborne units in order to carry out their assigned tasks. Accordingly, reinforcements are also coming in from the territory of the Russian Federation. But here the question is about quality.
President Zelensky also spoke about the fact that Russia has moved to a spring-summer offensive. Commanders of various Ukrainian armed forces units are noting an increase in the number of assaults, but the only result this brings is unprecedented losses among the occupiers, sometimes more than 1,500 people per day.
The Russians have indeed lost in just a few days, by conservative estimates, more than 8,000 of their personnel. We see that these numbers fluctuate from 970, 940, up to 1,700, 1,600. And for every square kilometer of advance by Russian troops today, the Russian army pays with the lives of more than 3 companies.
It is precisely to cover these losses that the redeployment of Crimean units to the front is being planned. As analysts note, the new personnel are meant to replace the wounded and reinforce the 810th Separate Marine Brigade of the Russian Black Sea Fleet, whose units are currently operating in the Kursk region and as part of the Crimean Operational Tactical Group. By the way, these same forces are now trying to advance in the Sumy region as well, but they do not stand out from the overall picture of the Russian offensive. As before, there are no results.
According to Mashevets, fighting in the border areas of the Sumy region continues in several directions. The forward units of the Russian group are trying to expand their incursion to a depth of up to 1.5 kilometers, but so far without success. At the same time, fighting is ongoing along the perimeter of this incursion north of Sumy. Despite several focused attempts by Russian troops to advance southward, they have not yet managed to reach their designated lines.
The Ukrainian command emphasizes that the Russians do not have enough forces there for a significant breakthrough. Moreover, it is from here that the Russian General Staff, among other things, draws fighters to continue exerting pressure in the Donetsk region, which means the Kremlin is not betting on success in the Sumy region.
Their task today is to create conditions for establishing a buffer zone, a security zone on the Sumy front. And accordingly, we are talking about the fact that the Russians are trying to demonstrate this activity of theirs with the aim of diverting our defense forces and possibly even forcing us to redeploy some of our reserves specifically to the northern Slobozhansky direction.
Another telling example of the Russian offensive remains Kupiansk. The fake capture of the city, which has been ongoing since last year, has taken on new colors. The armed forces of Ukraine managed to clear out the units that were holed up in the local hospital, and this has finally been acknowledged even in Russia itself. The howling among Russian Zed military is unbelievable.
Judging by reports coming from various sources, the last authentic call signs in Kupiansk have stopped being heard on the air. Heavenly Kingdom to the guys, they held out bravely until the end. Another message from Russian media, Romanov light. Kupiansk is almost completely occupied by the armed forces of Ukraine. Under the informational cover of the Ministry of Defense of the Russian Federation, the Ukrainian side is clearing out the remaining northern sector. All the guys from the Central District Hospital have died, and this means that Kupiansk is now almost completely under the control of the Ukrainian defense forces.
Despite this pressure from Russian troops, the defense forces are managing not only to hold their ground, but also to advance, as noted by the deep state resource. Moreover, now it's not just in the southern direction.
The Ukrainian defense forces have liberated Ozerny and entered Yampil in the Lyman direction. In the Oleksandrivka direction, during a continued counteroffensive, the Ukrainian defense forces pushed the enemy south of Novonikolivka. So, as we can see, the Ukrainian defense forces are achieving successes along the entire length of the front line.
The Russian war machine is faltering like never before. Even the propagandists can't stay silent. They admit live on air, there is almost no money left for new weapons. Factories are at a standstill, the defense industry is bursting at the seams. Weapons production is practically frozen. Drones are disappearing from the front. Iran is not willing to share its own. The Kremlin's internal panic has reached its peak. It seems the game is no longer in Russia's favor. Has the countdown really begun? Let's watch.
There's simply no money. But you hang in there.
There's no money, but you hang in there. Now in Russia, they say this not only to ordinary citizens, but also to the military. Russia's military-industrial complex is currently experiencing a major crisis, so severe that even propagandists have started openly talking about it live on air.
Everyone involved with the military-industrial complex now knows there's no money and you'll have to downsize. We can't afford it. And why is that? Because they brought the economy to its knees. What are you suggesting we fight with? Tell me, please. Let's say we need Mavics, for example.
But they have to be paid for and delivered. With what money? The need is enormous, but there's no money. There are no orders. The front says, give us some. But there's no cash. Look, Iran showed off gigantic underground factories that the Koreans built for them, at least 2, possibly more. And how many mines do we have in Donbass that could be repurposed and used for production? But we still need money. What are we going to fight with? The Mosin rifles have already run out.
What Putin's lackeys feared most has happened. Problems in Russia's economy caused by the war they started. Now it's also hitting their ability to continue waging this war. Military production is at its limit.
You see, the situation is that, in principle, Russia's philosophy is to throw everything into the military sphere and sacrifice the civilian sector. But there's a nuance. If there isn't even enough for the military, then no matter how much political will there is to spend on defense, it just doesn't work out. And in fact, this is what's causing the hysteria, not only from Solovyov, but also from many so-called Z military bloggers. The reality is that there just isn't enough money in the Russian economy. So when enterprises, including military ones, by the way, fulfill orders but don't get paid for them, after that they have nothing to pay their workers with and they shut down. Well, not all of them, of course, but even in Russia's military-industrial complex, there are already cases where enterprises connected to the defense industry have shut down. There is about to be a budget sequestration in Russia. What is sequestration? It's when a budget is adopted, a short period of time passes, and then they realize there isn't enough money for the planned expenditures, so they start making cuts. But why is this happening again? Because the economy isn't working and isn't generating the necessary profits.
But it would be a mistake to say that there is no money at all in Russia. However, the immediate outlook for Russian defense factories is to cut the budget even more and further reduce production. At the same time, Putin still wants to continue the war, because let's not forget, for him the worst thing is to lose face. That is why he is trying to prove to the whole world that Russia can keep fighting for many more years.
This is the problem with the Russian mentality. You know, I always give a historical example. World War I. Germany was doing perfectly well in World War I. Not only was Berlin not captured, there were no military actions on German territory at all. As the German military used to joke, they could see Paris through their binoculars. And at that moment, the German government assessed the situation and realized that their economy was collapsing. The economy does not allow you to keep fighting. In other words, you either stop paying pensions and salaries to public sector employees but keep fighting, or you surrender and preserve the possibility for your economy to survive. When you think several moves ahead, you undoubtedly follow the path of Germany in World War I. But when you don't think ahead, you behave like Russia does now. That's why many people, including Donald Trump, have this question. We can see that your economy is collapsing. Why don't you want to stop the war? They say, no, we will keep fighting. Well, accordingly, they like to say that they're fighting to the last citizen of Ukraine, but in reality, they're fighting to the last ruble in their treasury.
A vivid example that Russia cannot continue the war on its own is that the Kremlin is trying to get help from other partner countries. But one of the Kremlin's strategically important partners was Iran, which now cannot even supply Russia with the necessary number of drones.
Accordingly, what Russia did not receive remained in Iran, and Iran used it. But, as they say, in wartime, there was no time to redo the inscription from Shahed to Geran, so a drone with the inscription Geran flew to the Emirates. And this is proof that the cooperation is really very close, very tight. And now, by the way, I want to draw attention to how many drones there were. Let's say at the end of 2025, January, and the first half of February 2026, there was a huge number of drones that Russia was sending to Ukraine every night. And during periods of intense attacks, there were 700 to 800 drones. And everyone was writing that 1,000 drones was a prospect for the very near future, maybe even weeks, not even months. What do we see now? The last massive attack on Ukraine was 400, if I'm not mistaken, maybe 420, maybe 460 drones. So not only was there not 1,000, there weren't even 500. And this, it seems to me, is confirmation that to a large extent these drones are made from components that are produced in Iran.
Russia wanted to multiply its gains in the war against Ukraine, but it turned out that it keeps losing instead. It seems there is only one person left in Russia who believes that everything is going according to plan. Peace will come after all. Putin's maneuvers have been publicly blocked. Negotiations between the US and Ukraine have started with renewed vigor. The pace of events has changed dramatically. Now Kiev is leading. The moment of truth is approaching. Behind closed doors, the key questions have finally been raised. Europe is on edge. The situation is becoming extremely tense. Rutte has indeed signed a death sentence addressed to Moscow. Don't miss the first details coming up next. Peace may be closer than we think. The president of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky, received a report from the Ukrainian delegation on the results of the round of negotiations with the American side in Florida on March 21st to 22nd.
I am very grateful to the American people for their clear support of a normal, dignified peace for Ukraine.
In 2 days, the parties moved beyond general statements and focused on the most sensitive issues, those that will determine not just the end of the war but its consequences. Security guarantees and humanitarian mechanisms without which any peace risks remaining just a temporary pause.
We hope this will succeed. Overall, the situation remains quite clear. Putin does not want to end the war, but the main thing is what the world wants. All of us together must do everything possible, and we will continue to do everything possible to end this war.
At the same time, the negotiation process seems to be moving out of the realm of general statements and is becoming increasingly specific. The American side speaks of a narrowing of the range of disputed issues, while the Ukrainian delegation is step by step building practical mechanisms, turning political intentions into real guarantees.
The constructive negotiations were based on yesterday's progress and focused on key points for establishing a strong and reliable security system for Ukraine, as well as on critically important humanitarian efforts in the region.
And behind this diplomatic rhetoric, another very interesting detail can be seen.
This is in fact a continuation of the Pearl program for the supply of Patriot missiles paid for with European money. That is, this was discussed yesterday because the question arose, is America now ready to sell weapons for Ukraine to Europe for money? So I think that's exactly what this current round was intended for.
And while the negotiation track is becoming more or less clear, increasingly alarming signals are being heard in Europe. According to Politico, EU leaders fear that the escalation around Iran could shift Washington's priorities and turn support for Ukraine from strategic to situational. And here a dangerous crossroads emerges. On one hand, there is Ukraine and the need to bring the war to a just conclusion. On the other, the Middle East, the energy factor and the pressure on allies who are forced to balance on several fronts at once.
Trying to avoid a complete rupture of transatlantic relations, the leaders hope that their offer of limited support for his actions against Iran will be enough to persuade Trump to stay the course in the conflict with Russia.
And yet, despite these risks, NATO emphasizes that support for Ukraine is not weakening.
The United States is once again providing critically important intelligence support and supplying weapons, working together with Europeans to ensure Ukraine's fight against Russia, guaranteeing that it has everything it needs.
Therefore, despite geopolitical turbulence, the key line is still being maintained for now. Pressure on the terrorist country continues, and negotiations, though slow, are moving forward. With that, we conclude our broadcast. We continue to closely follow the most relevant events right now so we can be the first to tell you about them. Don't forget to subscribe. See you